Now, without question, one of the most surprising or shocking moments in the history of on-screen Star Wars had to be the beginning of Rogue One when we see Cassian Andor shooting a wounded informant in the back and killing him because that informant was going to be captured by the Empire and quite likely made to talk. And though we can argue that was actually a mercy, that a quick death was better than whatever the Empire had in store for him, or that to ensure the safety and security of the rebellion and its secrets for the sake of the fight for a better tomorrow, you could say, what Cassian did was necessary, it's nevertheless not something we're used to seeing out of the good guys in Star Wars stories. We're instead used to the good guys only doing good guy things, and the bad guys doing bad things because, well, they're the bad guys. Which isn't to say or suggest Star Wars is quite that simple. There is far more complexity to it than I think a lot of people who just watch it for the spectacle realize. Anakin's story, which is the story at the heart of Star Wars, is anything but a simple one after all. But that said, Star Wars on the whole really does more or less deal with the battle of good versus evil, and rarely digs into what you could call morally gray areas. It doesn't usually make you ask or wonder if the good guys are always on the up and up or not, or if they ever do or have to do anything shady behind the scenes. And on the flip side, it doesn't usually call into question the motivations of the bad guys or of the Empire or those who make it up. They are, again, more or less just thought of as bad guys doing bad things because they're evil, but certainly not every single member of the Empire is just purely evil or joined because they wanted to be part of an oppressive fascist regime. I'd even wager a lot of them, maybe most of them, from stormtroopers to technicians to random officers, they never truly realized or maybe cared about what the Empire truly was or was doing, or maybe they never knew. They maybe joined because it was simply a job or a career path, or they had no better options, or maybe the pay was really good, who knows? Which, no, doesn't excuse their actions or lead to some sort of argument that maybe the Empire wasn't that bad because they weren't all bad guys. But instead it brings us to the banality of evil, a rather controversial thesis put forth by Hannah Arendt some 60 years ago while covering the war crime trial of Adolf Eichmann, who, let's just say, or to not potentially anger the YouTube algorithm gods, did some really bad things during World War II, yet was observed to be, while on trial, as she herself reported, he was neither perverted nor sadistic, but rather terrifyingly normal. Meaning she believed this was basically just some average guy who did what he did for no other reason than it was his job, because he wanted to advance his career and didn't consider what his actions really led to because of an apparent inability to associate with his victims, or a lack of empathy, you could say. Or that he, again, simply saw what he was doing as just doing his job, and that was all he needed to justify his actions. Which then brings us to what we're seeing out of at least some members of the Empire in the Andor series, and specifically those like ISB agent Blevin, who seemed far more interested in just advancing his career rather than trying to be for the Empire or for the cause or wanting to work together for that cause. That not all Imperials are in it simply because they're evil and want to do bad things, but because for some of them it's a job or a means by which to further themselves or their own interests, independent of the results of those actions, which, to be very clear, is in no way meant to condone those actions. But these type of Imperials, those that sort of represent the banality of evil, are not the only type we're seeing. We're also seeing someone like Cyril Karn, who, though not technically an Imperial, though he wants to be one, he doesn't seem to be all that interested in just being a part of something where he can advance a career and make a name or a life for himself. Though I do think that's part of it, or his desire to join the Empire. I do think he wants to sort of prove his mom wrong about him, and his mom does have quite the negative impact on him, as we'll discuss further in a moment. But anyway, Syril, at face value, doesn't seem all that interested at all in doing bad things because he's a bad guy and will enjoy them or whatever else it might be. Rather, he seems to genuinely be interested in doing what's right, what he must do, because it's simply the right thing to do. I mean, let's not forget what set him down to this path that he's currently on, that being the murder of 2 security officers by Cassian Andor. He simply wants justice for them, which, well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's certainly nothing inherently wrong with wanting to bring a murderer to justice. He even risks his own career, or life, or freedom to potentially do this, the opposite of what we've seen out of some of the others in the Empire who, again, are really only in it to further a career and would never jeopardize that simply to do what is right. He even goes so far as to, at first, disobey the orders of a superior officer who all but tells him to drop the murder investigation, and then he instead takes a team to Ferrix to apprehend his suspect, which leads to the death of some of his men. Also then, after losing that job, no surprise, he continues to pursue Cassian and catches the attention of the ISB, who also warns him to drop it or else. But even then, he will not stop and even stalks an ISB officer who could have had him arrested and tossed into a prison somewhere, but doesn't and instead warns him again to simply drop it. But we know he's not going to. We know he's going to go to Ferrix, and he's going to be a part of this season finale. He's going there to try and catch Cassian. Quite simply here, Syril wants justice and will do whatever he must to see it done, which has generally been seen as a more good guy trait in Star Wars and elsewhere, right? That doing what must be done and risking or sacrificing your own wants or well-being to see it through is what the heroes usually do. You could even say a selfless pursuit of justice is the quintessential Jedi trait. And yet I think we'd all argue, we all have that feeling, that Syril would not make a very good Jedi, because his pursuit of justice is not as purely selfless as it may initially appear. Rather, because of an overbearing mother who berates and belittles and questions every move he's ever tried to make on his own, he's doing what he's doing as a means by which to give himself a sense of self-worth or purpose. In many ways, he's doing it simply to prove his mother wrong about him. And thus his motivations are not purely altruistic as a Jedi's would be, but rather much like Blevin and the others who see the Empire as an opportunity for personal gain or status or wealth or whatever else it might be, Cyril sees catching Andor as the potential for self-satisfaction or gratification, which is a very un-Jedi-like core motivation. Because Jedi do what they do simply for the greater good, not any type of personal sense of worth or affirmation, though they do no doubt get that feeling of purpose nonetheless. I've even argued many times before that what Jedi get out of the deal, or what they get out of being Jedi and giving up personal attachments, is a profound sense of meaning and purpose, though chasing that feeling of purpose is not the actual motivation, it is simply the windfall, you could say. But getting back to Syril, we've also seen him sort of drawn to this idea of bringing about justice and control and order. We see this through his fascination with, if not borderline attraction to, Dedra. What he says to her and his longing to be a part of the Empire or to help in any way he possibly can, and very much for the sake of being a part of the Empire and the control and order he can bring through it. And the irony here is that part of his desire to be part of the Empire is almost certainly a result of the way his mother has treated him, that he doesn't realize he wants to be just like her in many ways, that his lack of control in his own life has made him seek control by controlling others. He wants to become the very thing he detests, and he doesn't even realize it. And so what's truly fascinating about the character of Cyril Karn and the Andor series in general, many of its characters, is that it's showing us how fine of a line exists between good and evil, and yet many people fall somewhere on that very thin line, that not everyone can be quickly and neatly put on one side or the other, that those who are good or want to be good don't always or can't always follow some sort of moral or ethical code and hold to it while fighting the good fight. Nor is everyone who is on the side of evil simply evil for the sake of being evil, that some may be on the wrong side because they seek personal gain or not even realize what it is they're truly doing, which again does not excuse or condone those actions, but simply makes them intriguing and very realistic characters. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think of Cyril Karn. How would you categorize him? Is he a good guy in his own mind, fighting for the wrong reasons, or is he just a bad guy on the wrong side? Whatever you think, leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.